Are you in Athens?
Yes, and it is Easter. We celebrated, a bit today. It's a gorgeous day. It's spring, and everything's blooming and all that. So it's a very typical, prototypical Easter.
It's Easter Monday here, but we had a good Easter yesterday as well. And it's autumn, but it's kind of the same weather as probably what you're having. So there you go.
Yeah. Oh, I've never been to New Zealand, but I when I lived in California for a while, everyone sort of compared parts of it to Northern California, and there were some friends of mine that were escaping the I don't know, the California intensity by moving to New Zealand, and I was jealous because I just wanted to not necessarily live there, but I wanted to at least come check it out. And I've always been intrigued with, maybe you can answer this, is that
I'll try.
well, there's this thing. I mean, I guess recently I noticed, I really like this band, Unknown Mortal Orchestra.
Sure.
They're from New Zealand, and Tame Impala being from Australia, and there's just a history of kind of psychedelic bands from that whole region, and I wondered what is it that made that happen, culturally or geographically, or what. I mean, I don't know if you have an answer to this, but I just thought I'd ask you, since
I can speculate.
And you're
Well, the Flying Nun thing is a major influence on all the musicians down here, and there was an element of that in that, and basically it was basically an element of just experimenting and sucking in all these influences and then spitting it out, as most people do. But the other thing that I noticed that has it's most different about the music scene here in New Zealand, say in the States, is that it's not the motivation for getting into music is more purely musical. Nobody thinks they're going to get rich and famous. Whereas I've worked with bands in the States, and that was the goal: get signed to a label, and we're going to be rich. And that was definitely part of it. And that never comes up here. Nobody ever thinks that's possible. I don't know if that has somewhat of a purity of motivation, maybe. And that and there are certain mind-altering drugs around and things like that help.
Well, that's what I'm kind of curious about. Like, what is it like to what is it about being in that part of the world that makes you maybe more free, or less willing, not feeling like you need to conform as much. And I thought about it today a little bit, and I feel like the broad genre of psychedelia is almost become like the new skiffle or something. It's like it's a genre that's so accommodating and sort of without a lot of real rules or boundaries, that it's easy to get into and have fun with the music and explore weird textures or weird states of mind. And that's very convenient for modern living. And especially if you're a musician that's starting out, there's just so much fun to be had in that, without having to be like, oh, I need to learn how to play blues or jazz or even, program trap music by the book. It's like there's no real book for psychedelic rock or whatever. It's sort of like everyone's got a different recipe, and it's very wide. So I don't know, that's just something I thought about today. And maybe that combined with just being out there, it just makes it easy to have, explore.
Yes, there are mushrooms about.
I imagine.
But also, like, if you think of, well, obviously my website is named after the 13th Floor Elevators, who are one of the psychedelic bands of the 60s, and everything that we've just talked about kind of relates back to them. And they were kind of isolated in Texas, doing their own thing and taking multiple amounts of acid. So there you go.
Sure. I was when I saw the name of your site, I was for some reason a Hurricane fighter plane came to me as some weird, like I didn't think, I was like, was that 13th Floor Elevators? And I was like, no, that was Red Crayola, which was also a Texas band from the 60s. I don't know if they knew each other or played together.
I think they did. Yes.
And I just always Loved that song. There's another band, I think Bubble Puppy was from,
Hot
from
Smoking
Texas.
Sassafras.
And yeah, and just there was a thing going on there.
Well, they were all on
they
were all on the same label, International Artists, which was run by Kenny Rogers' brother, I believe.
Oh, cool. Okay. I didn't know that. Yeah. No, it's fun to dig into this stuff because you hear it and your ear will catch the sound, and then you'll dig into the history and culture and find out, there's all these little micro scenes but I do think, I've always responded to geography, like the vistas that I'm seeing, like when I was in the West Coast. Right. I'd go hiking or go to the beach, and I would be sounds would start coming into my head, and I imagine whether you're in Australia or coastal New Zealand or or Texas, there's something you see out there that makes you feel like a vagabond or a nomad, that makes you want to start making music. I mean, maybe that's what the Tuaregs get from their environment. So it's interesting to think about, geography as affecting rock music, because you wouldn't think it has absolutely nothing to do with that.
Yeah, but apparently it does.
In the end, it must. Yeah,
I've discussed with several musicians, because a lot of the musicians come from the South Island in New Zealand. And I asked them how much that affects, being from down there and their environment has on their music, and it's major. So
yeah, I imagine. Yeah.
And so, getting to your album, Faltering Lights, that, geography kind of has an influence on that, from you moving from California to Athens and kind of getting yourself set up there. So tell us about that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, I did grow up in the Southeast in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, as a child. So I was kind of steeped in the Southeast before I went to California, and I was on the West Coast for about 20 years. So when I moved back, I definitely immediately felt at home with this sort of there's just this creepiness in Athens and the Southeast that is it's just the old buildings. There's just more history. There's a lot of dead or living vegetation taking over everything. There's kudzu and vines and everything. And the West Coast is not like that. It's quite clean and grandiose and picturesque, And so when I moved back here, I just started feeling that, and also just going out and seeing bands. Bands were just louder and more rocking and actually edgier than what I was seeing in the Bay Area, which was a little bit more of a listening environment, And there were a lot of things there that I loved, that I miss, like really good jazz rooms and people, more listening rooms, more singer-songwriter stuff, which is kind of what I was doing out there. But when I moved here, I was like, you had to fill the bar up with energy, and people, audiences were actually a little more hostile if you were trying to be too precious,
Right.
And I had gotten comfortable doing that. I had an audience out there that would sit down and listen to me and listen to all my lyrics. And here it's like, you got to bring some ruckus, And I thought that was healthy for me, because I always loved, I played acoustic guitar for a long time, and I was finally able to plug in the electric and turn it up a little bit. And even though Faltering Light I'm playing mostly acoustic guitar on it, definitely has bigger, darker, and some aggressive textures and stuff. So that was creeping into my writing and my music. So and also just the collaborating I ended up doing. Dan Nettles, who plays all the lead guitar on the record, someone that's been in Athens for a long time. He has a band called Kenosha Kid that's primarily a jazz trio. So he was the first one on board, and he really opened up a lot of parts of the songs. And then when we found Jacob, the bass player, he's always played with he has a real broad style. He's played with singer-songwriters, really weird bands, Vic Chestnut, and he just is a very musical person. And then Joe Rowe, the drummer, was in the Glands, which is, to me, one of the Athens touchstone bands for me anyway. And they sort of slipped, they weren't part of the Elephant Six scene or part of the early, you know, indie rock that came out in the 80s. They were their own sort of time in the 2000s when they were active and made two wonderful records that I think just capture the city really well. Right. So he just had such a great way of adding this aggression and edge to the drumming, but also playing super quiet and really modulating, which I need, because I'm not a loud singer. I'm not someone that necessarily is on top of everything. So I've always needed musicians that are really dynamic and listen and are sensitive. And I have that, although you may not realize it. They're doing a lot of work for me in the background as a vocalist and a writer. So I was just lucky to find them, and they were all here. And, you know, a little bit of what you were saying about New Zealand is that Athens, it really is kind of a bywater where you don't come here with ambitions necessarily.
Right.
I mean, you might have ambitions to become weird and edgy and maybe get some kind of notoriety in a very small scene, but you're definitely not coming here to make it, you know.
Yeah.
And I think that creates a certain style of musician that is kind of looking for stuff to do that's interesting, you know.
Cool.
So that's definitely part of what happened here.
Right. Now you talk about your drummer and talk about influences and whatever. The overriding vibe that I feel from listening to the 11 tracks on your record is this propulsive beat that kind of permeates the thing. It's almost krautrock, for want of a better word.
Yeah.
You
know, and I've never, I'm not a, I mean, I've always loved bands in that genre, but I'm not a student. I didn't decide to make a record in that rhythmic idiom, you know. That just came out from the tempos. The stuff I used to do was very slow, with kind of Neil Young, right, you know, kind of languid guitar playing and stuff. And I wanted that energy for just I wanted to perform live and be like dancing with energy, you know. And that the BPMs on this record are generally they're pretty high. They're like 140, 145, which for me anyway is like a lot faster than I used to do. And that's the beat that just comes out of me, is that sort of, I guess they call it motoric.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, the drummer, I forget the guy that sort of coined that. He was, I guess he played with Can and
that would be
some
Jackie,
of those bands.
What's his name? Yeah, from Can, definitely.
Yeah. So yeah, he, you know, and you know, honestly, I hear that beat in some early Velvet Underground as well. I actually think, I mean, you know, everything goes back to the Velvet Underground at some point, or the Grateful Dead. Honestly, yes. Those two American bands really covered so much stylistic ground and made so many decisions at that time that we're still digesting, you know.
Right.
But no, that pulse is like, and you're right that there's music that makes that pulse super explicit, with just picked bass all the time, gang, 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 gang. And it's like, I didn't really want to do that, although I like the drums to be doing that, but the bass to be melodic and other things to be. So it's hidden in there, that pulse, which is why I think it sneaks up on you a little more than just the whole thing being like sounding like a post-punk or like a, you know, a record that's a little more by the book.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad that comes across. That was definitely something that people have commented on the record, and not something I set out to do, but there's, you know, at least the front half of the record is that, and then the back half starts getting really like spread out, and there's some slower tempos and longer textures. But yeah, the beginning is definitely like let's have fun with this.
And it sounds like, and they kind of segue one into the other. So when you were putting the tracking list, were you thinking about that while you were recording, that the song is going to go into the song, or did you do?
No, not at all. I've always loved records with segues, and there's many great ones. I always think Prince was really good at that, in the sort of, you know, Sign of the Times, a couple records out there. He just would slam these songs together, and when you listen to albums, you almost sing, you're ready for the next song to come up, and it's already cued in your head, and you go, oh, this song. And I love that, and I think that's a big part of album listening that's going away because of the way digital music is marketed. It's all song by song, and you miss those segues. So I just like a puzzle. Sequencing an album is this dreadful thing in that I find it's very important to me to do it well, and it's kind of involves a lot of hand wringing, but the sequence came pretty quickly once I started putting the songs together like a puzzle and being like, these songs make sense one after the other, and then you can find. And I always, whenever I record songs, I leave lots of tail on the front and the back, so you can sometimes just crossfade them over one another and make some weird stuff happen. So was not thinking of that originally, but got lucky with some stuff, and it's something I definitely think people should try to do with their music, because it's fun and adds an albumness to your work.
It's interesting about leaving tail on the front end. I'm a video editor by trade, and back in the day of working on tape rather than digital, we used to have to do that so that we could fade. If we wanted to crossfade or whatever, we had to have something to work with there that wasn't
instead of black.
Yeah, exactly.
or test tones or whatever
something in there. Yeah,
thing is. Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And so when were the songs written and recorded? Was it like a year ago, years ago, recently?
I mean, all those things. A couple of the songs were early when I first moved to Athens, probably back, I would say 2012. A couple of songs were born then.
Right.
And I had been knocking them around for a long time. I was on hiatus as an actual musician that released things for forever, because I was moving here and had 2 small children, and was sort of that whole time I was always writing and demoing and recording, but I didn't have a band. I didn't have the time, and I was just like, but the creative urge was always there. So some of these songs were just these things that I had squirreled away, and just by hook or by crook, slowly got a band together, just started putting the songs together. And the bulk of the recording happened at a studio called Chase Park Transduction, which is run by a guy named David Barbie in town, who's worked with a lot of great bands, Bob Mould and Sugar, and he's sort of he's a sort of a nucleus for a certain kind of scene in Athens, and he has a great studio here. And we just tracked all of the songs that I had in, I think, 2 days. It was so fast, it was not fun. But that's how studios go. We were just like, okay, next, all right, that's a take. Yeah. And with the setup and breakdown, 2 days is just really not much time at all. So I took those tracks home and added a few things and worked on them and mixed them. And this whole time I was still working quite actively in a restaurant and parenting and stuff like that. So I was just doing the slow grind at home on the computer. But once things, there was this point where everything turned a corner. I was like, this is a record. These are good songs. These mixes are good.
Yeah.
And it kind of encouraged me to keep going. And thank God for that, because this could have easily just stayed in my computer for longer. I mean, I don't know how things happen or not, but I will always write and record music, and I'll release it when I can, because honestly, releasing music is a good bit of work that's not. A lot of it's creative. I mean, I like taking photos and making videos and doing interviews like this. It's fun, but preparing everything, there's just a lot of administrative work, and if you're strictly creative, it's hard to do that. And I don't like spending tons of time on social media, which is what you really need to do these days to be a successful independent music artist. at least no one's invented a social platform that I really like yet.
I keep hearing these new ones every day. There's like a new one. It's like, well, what is that? Why is it here? I don't understand.
Yeah, I wish someone would invent one that was all audio.
Yeah,
because I want to walk around and not be looking at my phone. And if someone could be like, because I do like listening to podcasts. I think most people do.
Yep.
And something that was somewhere in between listening to podcasts and being on Facebook, that's all audio.
Yep.
I'm all in. That would be fun to be chatting with friends and then dipping in and out of conversations in rooms. So I don't know. We'll see. But right now I'm not don't want to spend all my time on.
Gotcha. So once you decided you were going to make a record and release it, what kind of expectations do you have? The record came out a couple of days ago, April 2nd. I guess. So did you have an idea in your head what you thought was going to happen?
I hoped that a small label that cared about what it was putting out would release it, and that's exactly what happened. I got incredibly lucky. Joe Rowe, the drummer, who was in the Glands, and the Glands box set was released by New West, which is a great American label with a big roster. And the owner of New West, George Fontaine Sr., I gave him a CD because Joe said you should give George a CD. He likes to listen to stuff in the car. And I said, sure. And I was going to send CDs to a bunch of small labels I thought might be interested in it. But I just sent one to him right away. And he called me a couple of days later and just wanted to chat. Right. And he had listened to it, I think, driving to Houston or something. And he just really latched onto the songs, I think. And he just said, I want to put out this record. And I didn't, just talking with him for 20 minutes, I knew he was the guy. We were like old friends talking right away about other artists and what I felt like doing. And, I guess he wanted to know if I was actually going to be able to, because I haven't been doing it for a while. I have a couple of kids. I'm not a young guy. I'm not in my 20s with a van full of gear ready to go out. And there's a lot of those people in Athens. I'll tell you, they want to go out and be on the road. And I said, I'll certainly do as much of that as I can. But truth be told, I'm just a songwriter that was on hiatus for a long time and put this record out. And he was unafraid, and he created a new label for my band called Strolling Bones Records, and another band he liked called Call Me Spinster out of Chattanooga. So this is sort of his hobby. I don't want to call it a hobby label, but a label that he can put things out that he likes instead of New West is a big label with a lot of artists, a lot of big schedule. And he didn't want to try to, shove us into something like that. So he created a new imprint that's Athens based. And I was like, that's amazing. And anything that happens at this point, it's all gravy for me. As long as I can perform these songs in front of people, I'm happy.
Right. Are you able to do that yet, or are you still?
Well, we have an album release scheduled for a couple of weeks from now in a small venue in Athens called Hendershots, which is really the only jazz listening room we have in town. And they've been doing a socially distanced dinner and a show events where there's 2 sets, and they only let 16 people in for each show, and they're spaced out appropriately. Right. And you do an hour, and then there's a set break, you do another hour, and then you do the following evening. So you do four shows. And I said, that sounds perfect. Right. I don't want to push it and there are venues that will probably let you play and get people in there. And at this point, at least in this country, there's a lot of people that already have both vaccines in. Right. So I think we were lucky in that we timed the release where we can kind of start doing stuff like that now. So I can't wait to play this stuff in front of people. It's been a year since we played, and That was February was a show we did right before all this started happening.
Right. Yeah. And
that was the show where George and some of his staff came and saw us and said, you guys are great. Let's do this.
Oh, so great.
It was just very, very fortunate timing.
Speaking of fortunate timing, you mentioned that, there's all these young bands up that are raring to pack up their gear and hit the road. And for you, it's kind of the lockdown has been kind of it seems like a leveler, like it's leveling the playing field. You don't have to compete against that kind of mentality because that's not what you're all about. So, they're not able to do that.
Yeah, and it has made you have to be a lot more active on social media, and I have some friends that have gotten really good at live streaming. But I have to say, the live streaming it's just it's a shadow of watching a performance. I think Chuck Prophet he said something funny about it, like you can't help but feeling like you're the cat at the window looking at the bird, like you're kind of like plowing. There's something about it that's where it's like And I remember noticing at some point I went outside on my street and I heard a guitar plugged into an amp just playing.
Right.
It was some neighbor, and I had this it was like a Pied Piper. I was like, it wasn't even music I liked, but I was like, I want to go see where this guitar amp is, because I had been so long before you hear that sound or the sound of a kick drum through a PA outside. There's just this thing you get that you want to just go see people doing that. And it's a very visceral reaction. So that has been missing. And I can't wait to feel a kick drum hit my chest, in person, in a venue. It's just, there's just something about that. That's great.
Now I see you have made a video for one of the songs, Old Joy. So
yes.
What's the process of that like?
Falling into a fountain of old joy, swimming in the chemistry. I can feel the pulses of this life. They're clicking away in me. Though I sometimes feel seasick, I still walk crooked for the world to see. With my arms down next to me, I still carry on sufficiently.
Well, I just had a friend who was into photography and video, and he lived in this house that had a ravine kind of behind it with a creek and woods. And I just wanted to be this sort of, I don't know, someone living on the margins, so to speak, maybe psychologically or even, financially, to hole up in this area and create like an interesting space to perform in and explore some of the themes in the song. So we did that pretty quickly. I built that sort of house of mirrors out of some landscaping wood and some old mirrors I had. And I was lucky to be able to buy some fireworks from a firework place that's closed all year except for New Year's and 4th of July. But the guy happened to be going into his shop to get something, and I was parked outside and scratched on the door, and he said, "Sure, come in. You can buy all these fireworks you want for your video." And then so that was fun. Because we didn't have a lighting budget or anything, so I said, I'm going to light these pyrotechnics off, and that'll be our lighting for the night scene. So, it was a lot of fun to make. There were some injuries, but that means you're just doing it right, I guess. You're yourself.
I hope it wasn't serious.
No, everyone recovered. Yeah,
excellent. So what happened on April 2nd when the album came out? What did you do?
So it went live. We had 2 singles released. There's another song called Umami Bomb that also has a video that you can find on YouTube. And so those 2 singles were released to the streaming platforms before April 2nd, but on April 2nd, the whole album went live. And I believe the label is shipping vinyl and CDs that were pre-ordered. So that's happening. So yeah, and then now this it's sort of like when you have the birthday week where you're working on your birthday, so you you book things on surrounding days. So we're doing a listening party a week from today. It's an outdoor listening party where we're going to play the album on vinyl and talk through it with I have a
That's
co-host.
Interesting. I just attended a listening party for a new Crowded House album. So
Cool.
Neil Finn's studio is around, or just literally across the street here, and they did a similar thing. They did a live stream. They had the record on vinyl. It's not coming out until June, but they had an advanced copy. So they had the whole band in the room with us and playing along with the record.
Oh wow, cool!
It was awesome. Yeah. And Mitchell Froom was there, who you probably know who.
Oh wow, sure.
He's in the band now. He produced their early albums and stuff. So he's.
Oh okay, I didn't know he produced. Yeah, I mean, I always think of Mitchell Froom as kind of a out there edgy producer of it. He did the Los Lobos stuff, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I didn't know he was in the band. That's cool. Intriguing.
Because we're sitting in this little room. There's like 25 of us, and usually these things are kind of boring. Listening things. You just put some headphones on and jot some notes down.
Yeah.
But here's the whole band, and I'm like sitting up against Mitchell Froom's, the organ that he's playing on.
Cool.
Whoa. Neil Finn sitting 3 feet away from me. So.
Yeah, so we're gonna play a song or two and then talk about the album a little bit and then play some more, because the problem with those live release parties is you're too busy performing to actually talk to anyone or be a host, and I wanted something where I could I don't know, say hi, shake some hands, and thank some people, and then later we're gonna perform the music. So it's interesting to release something and book things that are engaging, because as a consumer, when I'm trying to engage with music or a record, there's so many different ways you can do that, and it's not always seeing them in concert. Now, like I want to watch interviews on YouTube of the artists to see what they're really like. I think a lot of other people do that too now, especially young people. If you do a deep dive on an artist, you're spending a lot of time on the internet, and I think getting to see them live in person is increasingly a rare thing that ends up being hard to do and expensive sometimes, and can be disappointing too. Sometimes you go to these concerts and, especially, what's hard to me, and you probably run into this too, is a lot of bands that were, their heyday was in the 80s or 90s, and they're doing kind of reunion tours and revival tours, and that can be a mixed bag. Sometimes it's really disappointing, not because the band isn't good, but just the way it's presented doesn't feel like how you remember the vibes, the scene. So sometimes as an artist, you need to find a way to create that vibe that's not always in a venue or necessarily going to make you money either. I guess that's a part of it too. It's so hard to make money in music now. You've got to just do whatever you can, and sometimes that's something weird. Sometimes it's not.
Weirdness is good. Well, it's Austin, Texas is the weird place in Texas, which brings us back to 13th floor elevators. But I think Athens is a bit of weirdness in it as well.
Oh yeah. It's I would say there's a sort of a New Yorkiness about Athens, as far as the small the small island of arts here, and a lot of people do end up moving to New York and moving back. I think of the B-52s as a great example of that, and and that's you could almost imagine, when you think of Blondie and television and Richard Heel.
Richard Hell.
Is that his name? Yeah. People like that, you could almost see them like spending a day in Athens during that time and kind of mixing in with that. So there's always been, that's what's great about here, because it has some of that, but it's also very laid back and Southern and easy, cheap rent and easy living. So you don't have the pressures of New York. So, I feel like, of Montreal kind of had a really nice run of being, to me, like the most notorious band from Athens, you know, Kevin Barnes was always just such a weirdo in his own great way, you know. And so yeah, there's just been a history of eccentricity, I guess you could almost say, and you know, and a desire to be avant-garde in our own folksy way. I mean, maybe, I don't know how else to put it, but yeah, there's definitely something like that here. And I love, you know, I see the, you know, Michael Stipe and Mike Mills are around town. They still live here and walk around and do stuff. And they haven't, if someone like that, you know, I mean, Michael Stipe can live wherever he wants, and he does. He travels, but he spends a good amount of time here, and there's a reason for that. There's a community here that he wants to engage with and respect. So
cool.
So far, Athens is still cool and
keeping it weird. That's what we like.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, thank you very much for saving so much time,
of course,
on your Easter to talk to me.
Yeah,
it's fantastic. Hope you have a rest of your day is good, and peeps and Easter eggs under your tree or whatever.
Oh yeah, not too many peeps though. Yeah, no. I got to draw the line somewhere. 10 is enough. Yeah. Well, great talking with you, Marty.
You too. Thank you.
All right. Yeah.
Bye-bye.